Hey, this is Tom, and welcome back for part 2 of my interview with Matt Fitzgerald. This part of the interview is really exciting because we start to get into a lot more talking about his sculpting journey, where he's at, what he's doing. He asked me a lot of questions about my journey and some tips on how to do things going forward. So I think you'll learn a lot. Enjoy the interview. Well, let's kind of move right over there then to sculpting. We can talk about the making of those figures. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your sculpting journey, and I think it'd be good for people to hear and share. You're still early on.
Yes, very, 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 very.
So what have you been sculpting with? You're doing it analog, first of all, traditional. I should say that. So tell us, share what some of the materials the material you were using to sculpt with, and maybe some tools. Just give people a sense of, how they can go about it.
Yeah. So a lot of what I tried, I got from your channel.
Cool.
I didn't have everything, and there was just kind of I'd been sort of buying stuff here and there, I got some the silicone brushes,
Oh yeah, yep.
Off of Amazon, and some of the metal ones, the scoop stuff. I don't know the names. Burnisher, burnishing.
I don't even know if that's technically the right term, but that's functionally what it is. So I'm I decided that a long time ago in video. I'm calling this a burnisher. I don't know what it's really called. They always have these weird names. Anyways, yeah. So
yeah, metal killy bits. I just occasionally be picking stuff up. I'm I'm gonna get to this. I want to do this, and then I'd get distracted or whatever. And then I don't know. It was just one day where it's I want to start. I want to start right now. I had some green stuff from army painter green stuff or something for touching up some miniatures that were busted or something. I didn't have any wire, so I got a paperclip.
Okay, yeah, that works great.
I made an armature with a paperclip. I did a lot of things very incorrectly. I didn't have any cork or you have an excellent video on making a miniature stand, a miniature holder, which I still have to do. I've got wood sitting over there and stuff to do that. But what I did have was cardboard and XPS foam.
That's awesome.
So I stuck the feet into the XPS foam and I carved out something that looked like a cork shape, stuck it into there so I could hold it and put a bunch of green stuff on the armature, such as it was. I mistakenly didn't understand that one of the whole reasons about putting green stuff on the armature is so that the clay would stick to it.
Okay, so you did use polyclay for the main detailing. That's what I wasn't 100% sure about. Okay.
The green stuff I let cure fully.
Don't feel too bad. I did the exact same thing on my first miniature. I'm like, why isn't this working?
Yeah, why isn't it going on?
Yeah.
I used Fimo clay for the rest of it. I have him over here.
Yeah, show him off.
He's not really worth showing, but for the sake of the conversation,
don't be. Nobody should be ashamed of acknowledging where they came from and where they're going. I don't think.
Yeah, but the foam was funny because it was oh yeah, I have to bake him, so I should probably take him off the foam.
Yeah,
and that would have been a chemical disaster, I think. There's little mini Lordbreaker barbarian man.
Yeah.
If it'll focus.
Well, send a picture and I can put it up if you have one.
Okay.
You can do it that way too.
It's not camera's not behaving, but it was Fimo clay and that's kind of it. And I watched your video on baking these guys and threw them in the oven with
awesome.
Tin foil as a to prop him up.
Well, held together very well considering did you end up going back and reskinning, or is that's dry green stuff with clay over it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just
you can get it to work. It's just a lot more difficult.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was very goofy and janky, but yeah, but it was I was jazzed as kind of frumpy as parts of him look. I'm I keep doing this. I want to make little guys and that way I won't feel like this weird like kind of FOMO pressure to buy, like, oh, I don't have the whole set, or I'm like, which one do I buy? Which, it's just, I'll make them. Like, I'll just make them and I'll have them. I have so many old things anyway, like so many old miniatures that I need to paint up that I haven't, that like deserve some, attention.
Yeah. It's very hard. They're always coming out with more cool things, and there's so many more cool things in the rearview mirror. Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of new things, you guys have the new Mutant Chronicles Kickstarter. I didn't even know that went live. Like, I was looking forward to that, and then I just noticed it the other day.
It popped up, yeah. So Res Nova launched that. I think it was last week. Is it last? Yeah, I think it was. I don't remember. I don't remember, actually. I've been very busy, and I was like, oh shoot, yeah, that's happening. So yeah, that's going. That I'm very excited that's coming back. Just to clarify to everybody, because a lot of people thought I sculpted for it. I have not sculpted for it. I just lended my expertise as the sculpting director to find sculptors, work with them, art direct them, make sure we were creating a good product worthy of Mutant Chronicles Warzone.
They look really cool.
Yeah. I get to work with some.
I love all the different pieces and the variety and what you get, the options that you get out of the kits and stuff. It looks really cool.
Yes. Yeah, it'll be very neat to see where it goes, because right now the main sets are kind of the real basic of each faction, but in the future we'll have all the other different unit types and various weapons, and I mean, it's very cool. I'm actually really looking forward to taking some of these guys and maybe even subbing them out. I have an old copy of Mutant Chronicles Siege of the Citadel, and I used to be super crazy into Warzone, and I had apparently cannibalized some of those miniatures for my armies, and when I had gotten out of it, I sold off a bunch of those armies, and there went with it a lot of Legionnaires and a lot of the corporate figures, and so I've got a really random hodgepodge of figures for that right now. So it'd be nice to have everything represented correctly, and these figures work very well for that.
I never got to play Warzone or any of the Mutant Chronicle like RPG, or like, didn't they also have like board games too?
Yeah,
like, I remember board games as a kid.
So
like, they were next to like Hero Quest and stuff.
That's what,
like, what is that?
Siege of the Citadel was that, and that's actually a really fun game.
Okay,
I think you would really enjoy it.
Probably would.
Yeah, you should, like,
just looking at it.
I still play Hero Quest from time to time. I was playing through it with my kids, but I actively to bust that game out. I had one friend that was the game he played, and he made all sorts of new scenarios for it and like extra rules. It was like almost playing competitive sometimes. He was amazing, which is crazy because the game can be so swingy and random, but he was just like, he knew it backwards and forwards. But yeah, it's a very fun game.
That's sweet.
Yeah. So,
does he have those rules like written down somewhere? Like that?
I should ask him if he's got that. But yeah, he used to make custom cards, and he was part of some. I think it was a Yahoo group and he was a big participant in that. So yeah, I should definitely ask him about that. I'll let you know. I'll make a note.
Yeah, that'd be fascinating. That'd be so cool to look at.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I love that game. That was a great era. Hero Quest. There were so many. Battle Masters was coming out, and
yes.
What else was there? There was one other one. I feel like there was one other one at the time. I can't remember now. I don't know. I mean, that's clearly where we came from, nostalgia wise and everything. But it was a great time.
Lots of and just all the different like attractive packaging and stuff, and like big
you don't get those big boxes anymore.
Tons of cardboard everywhere.
Yeah, for sure.
Cardboard buildings, like it was very easy to like get like some cool looking terrain down on the table like quickly.
I wanted to ask you real quick, back to sculpting. What was one of the things that you found the most challenging about it as you got in? I mean,
hands.
Doing the sculpting the hands.
Yeah. If the camera would pick it up, like his hands look like they were stung by bees or something. They're very, very like, like very like swollen looking and stuff. But yeah, just to get like the shape of that was like kind of rough. I tried to do. I tried to get fancy and give him like spikes on his. He's got like a little like gauntlet thing. I tried to do spikes, both of which have since fallen off post baking. I don't know where they are now, but yeah, stuff like that. And then beyond sculpting, figuring out a good like consistent. I'm like slowly experimenting with all this stuff like on this guy because he's like he's the prototype and like I want to be able. That's also why he's not painted because like I want to figure out how to recast him so that I can like get that process down for like future projects and stuff. But like that's a big part is like I'm finding finding a good casting solution difficult. Like I tried blue stuff, which you saw.
Yeah.
Which is very simple, like press mold kind of stuff, and using an epoxy putty to like fill it in and I got halfway there. I got halfway there with it. I'm gonna try like pour molds.
I think you'll have a lot more success with that. But it is amazing how well that blue stuff can actually work.
I was shocked because I tried it on the Hero Quest Barbarian was the first thing I tried it on. It didn't do a good job at all. And then I tried like a Space Orc, like a second edition 40K Space Orc from that box set. And like parts of him came out like real sharp. But like, yeah, and then I tried it on this guy. And just so you can see it. Half of him came out like pretty good looking, and then the other half is just like total trash. But it's like if I could just replicate that on both sides of him, that'll maybe be okay. But I do think, and then the back looks like Stay Puft Marshmallow Man kind of stuff. But yeah, it's been a really, at the very least, it's been a fun process. And I did buy some off of Amazon. I bought some Smooth On silicone rubber mold making stuff, and it came expired. So I was so mad. Like I was streaming it too. I was like, "Hey, everybody, ready to make a mold?" Okay. Like I put them in clay. Like I made the bottom half of the. Clay. I was gonna make a 2-part mold and everything, and like got all of it ready. Got all of the little vents and stuff like in there. And I put my gloves on. I'm like, let's start mixing this together. And I open it up, and it's like hard as a rock.
Oh my
like,
gosh.
No. So I guess you got to kind of like buy it from a distributor or something.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing for sure. Yeah, that's sad that it was like that sitting around. I did buy a set from I think it was a Lumalite from Hobby Lobby once, and it worked fine. It was good. But
yeah, I know Blick Art Supplies carries that stuff too. I haven't tried yet. I'm scared.
Well, you can go straight to Smooth On. I believe they will. I think you can buy straight from them. I don't know. Is it very expensive?
Their shipping is very expensive.
Oh, okay.
If you do that, yeah.
Gotcha.
So I don't know. Like I haven't. Like that's. You want to talk about challenging? That's one of the things that I'm like bottlenecked at. I'm like, where do I get this? And where's the best price for a beginner? Yeah. Because it is kind of a big investment if you're just like kind of hobbying with it, right?
Yeah, I know there are sometimes, and maybe that's what Blick has, but like trial sizes and whatnot, definitely probably where you want to start there. But that's cool. Well, I'm excited. I'm sure you will do fine and figure it out because you're very good at, clearly very good at exploring and experimenting. And you're not afraid of that, which is what stops a lot of people in this hobby with sculpting and a lot of other things too. So.
And me too. Like I'm only now starting with it. Like I've wanted to do this for years, and it's never the right time. It's like I never have the perfect like everything here, and that's never the case for anybody. I've been finding as I get older, it's like you just kind of have to decide to do it, and then whatever you have, like work with that, and then you'll know what you need for the next round. Expect to fail, but try to have fun with it. Yeah, I think.
Awesome. Well, cool. I'm trying to think. There was something else I was going to ask you. Do you have any questions for me, or did I miss anything from what we were covering?
Oh my god! Like I could probably ask you about all kinds of stuff forever. help me. How do you fingers? How do you ankle? Like how do you get a mold together so you can like cast metal? And like all this.
Well,
stuff.
I hesitated to tell you about this. I will tell you about this, but it's gonna make you sad because it doesn't. Two reasons. One, I don't think it exists anymore, and two, I don't know how well a polyclay figure would survive. That's the other thing. And you might have seen a video about the Volcamold.
Yes. Yeah.
That thing is the coolest thing ever. But
it's and it's like some weird custom job that this guy made like 5 of. And
yeah. I still couldn't believe that I got it back in the day. But I'm actually surprised that nobody else has like picked it up because it's not that complicated. It's really just it's a tooled out metal frame that you bolt down and shove whatever mold rubber in it.
Stuff, and it's not exactly like rocket science, right?
It seems like actually, frankly, as long I don't know. I say it's no big deal. I guess if you can get 2, I'm not sure what it is. If you can get 2 blocks of metal, whatever kind of metal that is, and you got a buddy with a CNC machine, he can probably make you one.
Yeah.
But yeah, that thing is super cool. To be able to make those nice durable molds, but you have to have durable figures. I've only had success with I take it back. I have never molded a FEMA one, but from my experience is that you typically want to be working with low temp rubbers, not the stuff that I use and that it uses the high temp, more traditional rubber, which will most likely crush and melt your stuff. So
yeah, this guy, like, he feels a little bendy.
Yeah.
When I press on him, like there's some give there, and I'm like, I bet he would fall apart if I went a little further with that.
It might be okay. The first polyclay figure I did was one of these sci-fi girls that I did a long time ago, and I skinned the green stuff, and then I just started putting on the Fimo, and I was doing her kind of legs and hips area just because it was a larger area, and that's usually kind of where I start wrapping the material around. And I was like, crap, this keeps like shifting and piling off. And so what I did is I finally did just like bake that, and then I finished the rest in probably Procreate. I don't recall one of the polyclays. But so I sent it off to mold, and they molded it. But yeah, she totally fell apart wherever that was. But because Fortress Figures, these guys are amazing. They got a perfect casting out of it, perfect cavity out of it. But yeah, she came back with like shoulders, arms, and then nothing, stick figure and bones until you got down to her calves and the boots. It was so funny looking. I should find.
But they somehow got a mold.
But after all the pressure released, it was like it had basically crushed and shifted it all around. That it just fell apart once it was opened up. So. Yeah.
I wouldn't be too bummed if that happened to this.
As long as you
if the mold was made.
As long as you got the get a good cast, it should be good.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways,
is that like when you say polyclay?
I'm talking about Fimo. That's the generic term. Polymer clay. All that stuff. The Sculpey 3, the Fimo, the Primo, I think, is the other one. I'm sure there's others, but those are the main 3. Yeah, and actually that was also Fimo Soft, which also tends to not hold up as well in mold making because it's a little bit softer and less durable of a clay. And yeah, that's when I shifted over to it was classic, and now it's professional. But that stuff is great. I love that stuff. Yeah, it's very good.
This is all such a discipline, man. Like there's so many things.
Yeah. Well, and I
like even if you get into mold making, it's like and you do the pour molds, it's like people make like degassers and stuff to get bubbles out of the pour and all this. I'm like, I still want to do it though.
It's a cool process. Well, and you can get pretty involved with the setup, but it's not that expensive to get a good setup to get really nice molds. I've never done it. I did a couple just generic pour molds. I never invested in that stuff, but I was looking at it for a while. I finally did decide, probably as I worked more with Fortress Figures and they just did it. I didn't have to do it. I'm like, you know what?
Let the professionals.
I'm just gonna let them do that. I gotta let this go. too many
Oh,
other things
man.
going on. But I hear you, man. Like my whole life and journey has been like I wanted to buy some Spincaster and do it all myself from start to finish, and there's definitely an appeal to that as a creative
Yes.
person.
Yeah, like you get kind of trapped into that thing. Like I want to do I want to vertically integrate.
Yeah. Well, it's fun. I don't know. I think we're very similar in that mindset of it's appealing to make it from, start to finish, literally start to finish. And to know that you had a hand in every aspect of the creation. It's very rewarding.
And that's like, I watch you sculpt, and it's like you produce these like beautiful figures, and you're starting with wire and literally a lump of clay. And that's just intensely satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was satisfying making this like derpy little guy, but like watching you do this stuff, it's like that's gotta feel like awesome.
It is.
To just have nothing and then something.
Yeah, it's pretty weird.
And it's tactile. It's not like a video game. It's not like a bunch of pixels on a screen, or it's like this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's occupies real space now.
That's what drew me away from. I really do like illustration and whatnot, but the fact that what you're working on is immediately a real physical object that can be used in all sorts of different ways is really neat.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe you get to go play a game with it now.
Mm-hmm.
Like where there's like this whole scenario and dice and everything and rules, and it's cool.
So what are you thinking about sculpting next?
I want to try a skeleton warrior type thing. It helps too that like the first miniature that I ever bought, outside of Hero Quest, like Hero Quest was the first, like the intro to all that stuff, and it was like before I really understood miniatures.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like to me those were kind of like army men with like that had swords.
Right.
And
Good point.
But like when I like the first like proper gaming miniature that I remember buying, or like that I asked my mom to get me because I was like 10 or 9 or whatever, was a Ralpartha skeleton warrior on like a mounted, like a skeleton horse, and I found him too. Like
Ooh,
I don't
cool.
have him anymore, but like I found like people still like, I think it's Ironman Miniatures does the classic.
God bless
Ralpartha
them
stuff.
for
So,
still keeping all those miniatures alive. That's amazing.
Yeah, and there's company like Alternative Armies. They publish Laserburn, which became Rogue Trader.
Oh.
And then they still cast the 15 millimeter like Laserburn miniatures that are the prototypical like Space Marines and Imperial Guard and like all that stuff. I was like, I didn't know like any of this
cool.
like, was around, and like and like now I want to go play Laserburn. Like, I want to go like back to the genesis of all these things. But like, and that's like again they're 15 millimeter, and like I saw your videos on 15 millimeter, and I've been watching other people play games like Dragon Rampant with 15 millimeter, and it's like it's kind of refreshing how much smaller space all of it takes.
Yeah. Or you can if you want, right, you can double up your count, and then it looks like you got a real massive battle going on.
Yes, like all the table gets bigger in scope, and you can construct smaller pieces of terrain to fit the scale and everything. The Iron Wind with the Ralpartha guy. Like I've always liked skeleton warriors, and watching like stuff like Jason and the Argonauts growing up on movies like that. Like I want to try a skeleton. I don't know what'll happen. But, and especially just because the first, let's call it the first Lordbreaker module, like it generated a necromancer, and therefore like I had tables that associated with it. It's like, oh, skeleton warriors and zombies and etc. cultists. So I'd like to do a skeleton warrior just to see what it's like. And
cool.
We'll
Have you thought about how you were going to approach it?
I'm gonna make a stand, like you told me to on your YouTube videos.
It'll make your life so much easier.
Yeah, no, it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's like I like that the top is green stuff, and I don't know. I don't know. You have skeleton.
I have a skeleton video, yeah. I was
Okay.
the one suggestion, if you permit me, I was going to say is I would suggest trying to do it all out of a poly clay. I'm sorry, not a poly clay, a putty. So green stuff or Procreate, whatever you're using.
Would you say epoxy
putty? Yes. Well, when I say that, I'm saying like green stuff. You don't want to use, because obviously there's lots of epoxy putties, right? I mean, technically, Aves Epoxy Sculpt is one, and you got those.
That's the one. Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about.
Okay, you can try that if you want. I've tried to sculpt with it by itself, and it's very soft and squishy. I do actually like Jason Wiebe, another sculptor, turned me onto this. I like mixing it in with green stuff because it makes the green stuff a little bit more clay-like and a little bit more usable. Makes it really hard so you can file
less
and cut.
tacky,
Yes,
sort of.
yeah. It takes away. It's still plenty tacky to like get it on, but it does remove a little bit of that, so it's not just. It doesn't feel like bubble gum anymore quite so much.
Yes, that's nice. What bothered me about it at first.
But 2 reasons. Well, I said that. I don't know if it's 2 reasons. The main reason is
probably one of the reasons.
with sculpting skeletons and whatnot. You can put that thin little skin and then you can add some clay. But I think you'll find it a lot easier. No, I do have 2 reasons why you should do it. You'll find it easier to just put the clay on there because you won't be fighting with it getting too bulky. That's one. Plus, if you make a femur and then you're like, oh, I want to add this whatever this nub is that goes into the hip or whatever, you can just add a little piece on there very easily later and not kind of sweat that you're mushing everything around. But the other reason is I lost it. Oh, give you practice with epoxy putties, because you can basically do your whole figure in clay, but I find there are certain times that it can be a lot easier to just do your main sculpting with the poly clay, like the Fimo, and then go back in on some little detail. Maybe it's some fingers or maybe it's a little emblem. So there's going to be times you'll probably find that you'll want to use epoxy's putty, and so it's good to have practice with that.
Yeah.
So
that's a good point. Yeah. From soup to nuts with that material.
Yeah, and it should be a more approachable figure to do. It can be a little challenging, intimidating when you're trying to do like a fully formed physique and stuff, where because you're spending a lot more time letting it cure, or you're putting a lot on and then you're trying to learn how to not smush everything around, and it's just a lot to take on. So this kind of forces you to work with just almost like it's slightly building up the armature, but then you're done.
Yeah. You're literally skeleton.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was one of the tougher parts about like doing a human, like a flesh and blood human, was like putting on little things like the nose and the hair, and it like kept wanting to come off, and like getting that stuff to stick and stay in place. Yeah, accidentally smushing it. Yeah, it's just challenging. It's so little. Do you use a magnifying glass at all?
I don't anymore. So for a while, I was using an Optivisor, I think a ×10, which is I think the kind of high level one. I stopped many, many years ago because I found that I was taking longer to sculpt. I was putting, I mean, it's cool to put extra detail, right? But I was putting too much time and getting too zoomed in on spots, just like you do when you're drawing and on the computer or anything. You get too focused
and then you wind up with an imbalance in the piece.
I
at least from a drawing perspective. Yeah, I can totally relate to that.
And I was just, so I took them off. I'm like, okay, it forces me to look at it more as at the whole, and then I'm seeing it how it really will look. I mean, you're still looking at it way closer than pretty much anybody else is going to be looking at it when they use this figure. And so that helped me get my speed back up and not waste time on inconsequential details. But I'm over 40 now, so I most of the time have to sculpt like this so I can see it right.
Sure, yeah.
So I was thinking about possibly getting one again just to help, even if I'm painting miniatures, just to not maybe strain as much. Yeah. But no, that's my reasoning behind not. But yeah, if you feel it helps you, I would just say don't get too lost in the weeds. That's all I'd say. But
right.
Yeah.
Because I used to do that with just painting miniatures too, and it was like I found myself taking longer.
Yeah.
Because my grandfather was he made jewelry, but he was also a brain and eye surgeon.
Whoa.
So,
Wow.
Like he would do that as a hobby, and like I inherited his jeweler magnifier thingy. Unfortunately, that got lost in the fire too. But occasionally I'd use that to paint miniatures, and it was like, oh my, like I can see everything now. And it's like, and if you can see everything, like then you want to start working everything, right? Instead of just doing like, yeah, because like you say, like no one, even you probably after it's done, like you're not going to be like looking at it like this all the time.
No,
right?
No, absolutely. But it's very easy to get lost in the details, especially when you're creating it from the ground up like that. And
yeah.
do everything you can to kind of step back, give yourself perspective on what you're creating. So
look at the silhouette.
Yeah, that's the other thing I could give as a recommendation is and that's why I like working with polyclay so much, is you can kind of take more time with that. With green stuff, you tend to, or epoxy, you tend to have to kind of dig in and start making decisions because it's going to cure.
Because it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hardening.
So, but with the polyclay, you can literally build it up really rough, like a sketch, pretty much everything, and then you can go back in and start refining and cleaning up. And I really like that because I've always been somebody that's been taught and strove to get a really good pose or a general, a really iconic form going, and then you go in and finish your details. So,
where did you learn all this stuff?
Well, I did go to school for illustration, so that helped me a lot. I used to, even after, it took me a long time to kind of further get to that, but I went to school for illustration and computer graphics, but I wanted to be I wanted to be an illustrator, but I'm like, I should learn computer graphics because I'll get a job easier that way. And I wasn't quite feeling my skills were and they weren't up to snuff, and I hesitated. So, but I always loved miniatures even back then, and I started right away, right towards the end of school, trying to get work, and I did. So, but as far as the actual sculpting and everything, that was kind of like you said, just growing up, I loved comics. I wanted to be an illustrator or a comic artist, and but then I started to find miniatures, and I was like, man, 3D is really cool, and I would do little sculptures from time to time, and then kind of with my love of the gaming and everything, I'm like, I want to make this myself, and so I started to explore that, and by that time, I think a lot kind of how it's worked out for you with Savage. You've practiced all this art. You were able to kind of culminate it and make something that appears like, whoa, you must have been doing this forever or doing all this stuff for a long time. And no, it's just the rest of your background kind of allowed you to turn it into something and make it appear as if, you just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's like you've been doing stuff that's similar enough over like 2 decades or whatever, and then it's like, the translation's not too tough.
And then but more specifically with sculpting, lots of practice and a huge thing, and again why I started doing this channel was to share the way I was shared to by going to these sculpting meetups, either at Gen Con and then again at Reaper, and having all these great sculptors being so generous and willing to share. Learned a lot of things. So
yeah, that's awesome. It's so niche, and I'm actually kind of like glad that it's still kind of is, like it hasn't turned into like what video games have turned into, sort of.
It feels like it's
to a
degree, yeah, but it is still very niche, and you can still approach so many of these people, and it's really cool.
And like I asked you about this earlier too when we were emailing, like kind of on that sort of topic. Like, it's kind of hard to find like a good database of these guys. It is.
It's almost like all word of mouth,
anything like that.
Yeah, I looked again, and here we'll do a call to action for everybody. So if you know of any database that kind of catalogs sculptors and what they do, what miniatures they've sculpted for, companies they've sculpted for, let us know. The ones that we, and I'm forgetting the name of it now. I didn't write it down.
Me too.
Stuff of Legends is a great resource for, it kind of captures old miniature catalogs. And then there's, what was that other one? Yeah. We'll put it down there. It was Miniature
something.
Was that hosted by, it was hosted by some miniature company. All right, I'm going to look it up too. And hopefully you'll get it.
It's like miniatures of legend, or no, that's stuff of legends. You just said that.
Here we go. Let's see. Miniature.
But you
miniatures.
have a profile on that.
Yeah,
one.
miniatures-workshop.com/lostminiswiki.
Lost Minis Wiki.
Yeah, which
yes.
I thought it was somewhat tied to Stuff of Legends, but I don't know if it is. But there was one other one that I found that seemed a little bit more modern, but all of them have holes. Like that, and that, like speaking to what you said about it being niche, even though it's blowing up a lot more, like we're all doing this kind of like by ourselves without a lot of recognition in most cases.
Yeah.
And because it's so niche and approachable, where you could do everything start to finish by yourself very easily. It's hard to capture all that information, especially with it not being a mega industry like film, where you're going to have millions of people helping aggregate the data.
Like I'm worried about like people 30 years from now, right? Like wondering who made, some weird little like Marauder miniature or something,
that's right.
like or Grenadier thing, and like I don't know who sculpted this,
So the call to action, share that in the comments if you know any of these databases. It's a cool thing, because people are always sharing them.
Should be preserved. Like a lot of that info, like like a lot of these sites, they don't have pictures for a lot of this stuff. Never mind like a name associated with the mini, but they'll have like the product catalog code or whatever, but not like not a lot of stuff.
It puts it in perspective. This industry has really grown and impacted so many people's lives, but to think about another 20 years or so and how much of the information will be lost because it hasn't been
it's going to wind up being lost media. Some of it probably already is, right? Like it's
especially those early days, the early 80s or pre-80s stuff where everybody was just doing it out of their garage basically, and
a company of like two or three people just shipping out stuff, getting a check by mail. Like I want Robin Hood and like three bad guys or something. Made to order.
Crazy time.
But that still sounds so appealing to me. Like if I could make video games and like make miniatures and like little like rule sets and stuff like till I die, like that'd be the way to go for me.
That's right. I'm right there with you. That's why I've kept this going. I do have a day job that I use to support my family, but I really enjoy doing miniatures on the side, and it's great additional income, and especially a creative outlet. But that's frankly one of the biggest reasons I do it, is because I don't want to do what I'm doing for the rest of my life. I'd rather do miniatures and games for the rest of my life, and I don't want to have to get started at say 65. If I retired at 65, I don't want to. Okay, it's time to get going.
Now at least I can figure out how to make a little tiny axe.
It'll be there for me. I'll already have it developed, and then I can pour all that extra time and creative effort that I will have into that. So,
man, I hope it works out for you now.
Thanks.
I want you to be doing this now forever.
Well, that's another thing that I've made peace with a little bit, like I was talking about, with wanting to win and just balancing and changing my perspective. Feeling like realizing that I can be winning at doing it, even if it's not full time. As much as I would love to do that, I'm not getting frustrated by it like I used to. I used to get very depressed and frustrated that I wasn't able to go as far or spend as much time, and I've worked on that a lot to be able to be happy with what I can do, and then therefore at least that's actually freed up more time to do it, because I wasn't moping around, I'm not being able to do anything.
What's the use?
And then you're like, I could be sculpting right now, but instead I'm moping about it.
So. And there's something, if not all, to be said for like, I mean, it's trite, but it is like, that's the whole thing, is like the enjoyment of it. You gotta be having fun.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why it's so appealing to create our own awesome things, like Savage and Lordbreaker and whatever I'm calling what I'm doing these days. I don't really have a name for it, but I'm enjoying
you
it.
Seem to be building up these little like forces.
Yeah.
And I'm always like I'm interested to see what's coming next with like, because you had your goblins, and then the garden gnome guys.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it seems like you are kind of building a world, but you're not saying you are.
Yeah.
not to like force a confession. Or
No,
anything.
That's a very good point. And this is probably the longest that I've stuck with something, even though I'm kind of exploring different avenues with it. I started Mercs with Keith. I've got a lot of Keiths in my life, and I almost said the wrong Keith. Keith Lowe. I started Mercs with Keith Lowe. He's doing these cool concepts. I was drawing, sculpting them up. We thought, well, maybe we'll do a game someday, and then his friend Brian made this cool game for it. That blew up, and then I had things happen. I had to get out. Then I I want to do some miniatures, so I made some sci-fi and some fantasy. And I did those, and people really liked the sci-fi, so I did a few more of those. But then I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. And then, then I went to work for MegaCon Games, Mercs, for a while, and I wasn't doing any of my own stuff. And then when I left, I'm like, okay, well, I want to do fantasy now, because I'm sick of doing sci-fi guys, because that's what I was doing most of. And yeah, now I've kind of stuck with that, and feel like I've, people always talk about finding your style and everything. And I feel like in some ways I feel settled in that. I still want to progress and do better, but I feel like I've kind of found a direction of what I want to focus on.
Yeah.
There. So yeah, but it's always been hard. I have so many interests, so much.
Yes, you want to do everything.
Exactly.
And if you do one thing, there's not enough time to do the other thing. So I shouldn't do anything ever.
That's right. That's right.
You get paralyzed from choice.
Mm-hmm. And that's,
or I do.
No,
anyway.
I'm right there with you. And so it's always been hard. I'm like, well, I want to try something else. And that's actually part of what I think why I've been able to settle on this a bit is I finally embraced, like, okay, well, I'm going to do this avenue, the goblins for a little bit. I'm going to do the gnomes for a little bit. The next, I'm going to do these frogs for a little bit. And there will be other things too. So yeah, I won't comment on it.
Did you say frogs?
I did say frogs. So that has technically
Have you shown any of those? Because I haven't seen any.
Well, I have actually shown it twice. Oh, that's right. Wait, I haven't. Okay, so on the first episode of the and I don't have it in my hands. Otherwise, I would share something. Maybe I'll pop it up on screen in post.
Okay.
But I will share it here because I did hint at it
as depicted here.
Yeah. I hinted at it on the Sculpters, and some people guessed that it was going to be a continuation of Sir Frogsworth, but in with more figures, not just a single character. And then we've been recording the second episode of the Sculpters, but we've had a technical difficulty that we haven't realized until we get all done twice. And so I in my brain I'm thinking, I've shown this off. I'm like, shoot, no, that episode hasn't gone up, so I haven't told anybody, but I was showing off the sketches. So. But yeah, I could post something here. I'll if nothing else, I'll send them to you so you can see what I'm doing. But,
okay, cool.
Well, great talk. I want to do it again sometime. I look forward to seeing your progression with sculpting, and I am super excited. I'm really excited to see what Lordbringer brings. And yeah, I'm really excited that you're continuing on with Savage too. It's such a fun game, and everybody should go to Steam and check that out.
Thanks. Man.
It's still in early access, but it is worth it. There's plenty there to play with and explore. If you like, I don't know. Well, at the very least, I could say retro side-scrolling games with a lot of depth of exploration. You'll really, really like this game. And if you like Conan and Barbarians, you'll really like this game. It's such a great homage to all those wonderful things. And art's great, sounds great. Yeah, it plays really well. So
I appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem. And I guess before we run out, I'll put stuff down in the show notes of where people can find you. But if you want to do a shout out to anything specific else,
sure.
Yeah, go ahead and do that.
My Twitch channel is twitch.tv/Tobor Prime, where I don't do it enough. I don't do it often enough, but that's where I'll work on Savage and sometimes Lordbreaker too. Like sometimes I'll paint and like make attempt to molds of my little barbarian miniature. Yeah, just like random stuff like that. You know, a little bit of hobby, a little bit of game dev. Yeah, Savage the Shard of Gosen is on Steam, as Tom said. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Okay. Well, yeah, check it out. You are on YouTube. People can find you there, but you kind of post as an auxiliary there usually, right?
I want to
the
change that.
Okay.
I do want to change that, but yeah, like it's like two videos a year maybe.
Well, I suggest everybody subscribe there. That's actually where I usually find out what's going on with you, Matt, because I'm not the best at twitching or whatever. Yeah. I don't know what the term is. I will seek people out like you when I have to, but usually if you come up with an update on there, that's when I'm like, oh yeah, he's doing stuff. It's sweet. Okay.
Well, that's encouraging me to put more time into the YouTube space too. So I do have I have footage of like me sculpting the barbarian. I just haven't edited it down into like a video. So there's like stuff that I could throw up on there. So I will.
Cool.
I will do that.
Cool. Okay. Well, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, and I almost forgot my catchphrase. Everybody, keep sculpting.
Yes, sir.
I really hope you enjoyed that interview with Matt and the sneak peek of my next project that's coming up. You should definitely check out Savage Shard of Gosen. It's a great game, and it really shows you what one person is capable of creating. But until next time, keep sculpting.